It's a freezing night in Philadelphia. The stadium is shaking. 70,000 people are on their feet, screaming their lungs out. It's a playoff game. Everything is on the line. And on the sideline, one of the best wide receivers on the entire planet is doing something nobody in football has ever seen before. He's reading a book. Not watching the game. Not talking to his coaches. Not studying the defense. He's sitting on the bench, in the middle of a playoff fight, calmly flipping through the pages of a self-help book. Like he's on a beach somewhere. Like the game happening 10 feet in front of him doesn't even exist. Now here's the part that'll mess with your head. 1 year before that moment, this exact same man was a world champion. This exact same team stood on top of the entire National Football League. Confetti raining down. The trophy lifted into the sky. The most feared, most explosive offense in all of football. Unstoppable. Untouchable. The team everyone else was terrified to play. So how did we get here? How does a Super Bowl champion fall apart so fast that a superstar would rather read a book than take the field? How does a coach end up with eggs dripping down the front of his own house? And why, after all of that chaos, all of that heartbreak, all of that finger-pointing, are people right now, today, saying the Philadelphia Eagles are about to become the scariest team in the league all over again? Stick with me. Because what happened to this team, and what they are secretly building right now behind closed doors, might be the wildest turnaround the NFL has seen in years. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why some people believe the Eagles are about to explode, and why other people are just as sure the whole thing is about to blow up in their faces. Let's rewind. Because to understand where this story is going, you have to understand where it started falling apart. Go back to the beginning of 2025. The Eagles are fresh off the mountaintop. Months earlier, they'd walked into the Super Bowl and completely destroyed the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a close game. Not a nail-biter. A beatdown. 40-22. They didn't just win. They embarrassed the best team of the decade on the biggest stage in sports. And the heart of that team? The offense. They had a running back named Saquon Barkley who ran like a man possessed. That season, he did something almost no human being has ever done. He racked up over 2,000 rushing yards. And when you added in the playoffs, he crossed 2,500 yards on the ground, the first player in the entire history of the NFL to ever do that. He was breaking tackles that shouldn't be breakable. He was ripping off 70 and 80-yard runs like it was nothing. Every single week, he looked like he might go for 200 yards. They had a quarterback named Jalen Hurts, who was named the best player in the whole Super Bowl. The MVP. A leader. A winner. A guy who just found ways to get it done, over and over again. They had 2 star receivers. A.J. Brown, a big, physical monster who could bully any defender in the league. And Devonta Smith, smooth and precise, a guy who could get open against anybody. Behind them, an offensive line that was widely called the best group of big men in all of football. They had everything. They were the gold standard. When people talked about how to build a perfect team, they pointed at Philadelphia. And then the coach who ran that offense left. His name was Kellen Moore. He was the mastermind calling the plays during that championship run. And when you win a Super Bowl, other teams come knocking. The New Orleans Saints offered him a chance to be their head coach, the top job, the dream job. So he took it. He left. And just like that, the offense that had just conquered the world needed a new brain. Now, most teams would panic. But the Eagles felt confident. They promoted a coach who was already in the building, a guy named Kevin Patullo, who'd been right there beside Kellen Moore the whole time. The thinking was simple. Keep it in the family. Same players. Same system. Just a new guy holding the play sheet. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. Because when that 2025 season kicked off, something was different. Something was off. And it didn't take long for everyone watching to feel it. Let me paint the picture for you. Saquon Barkley, the man who nearly broke the all-time rushing record the year before, suddenly couldn't get going. Week after week, he'd get the ball, and the holes just weren't there. His yards dropped off a cliff. He went from averaging over 125 yards a game to barely scraping past 60. By the end of the year, he'd fall all the way down from 2,000 yards to just over 1,000. Still a good number for most players. But for him, for the guy who was a walking highlight reel just months earlier, it felt like watching a Ferrari stuck in traffic. And the passing game? It was worse. Much worse. This team, this offense, full of stars, full of talent, was ranked 23rd in the entire league in throwing the ball. 23rd. Out of 32 teams. Think about that. They had 2 Pro Bowl receivers, a Super Bowl MVP quarterback, and the best offensive line in football. And they were near the bottom of the league in moving the ball through the air. When it came to putting points on the board, they slipped all the way down to 19th. From the best offense on earth to below average, in a single year. But numbers only tell you part of it. Because the real story wasn't in the stats. It was on the sideline. It was in the body language. It was in the frustration you could see building, week after week, like steam in a kettle that was about to blow. And nobody was steaming more than A.J. Brown. Remember him? The big physical monster. The bully. During the championship season, he was a weapon. But in 2025, the ball just stopped coming his way. Game after game, he'd line up, run his routes, get open, and nothing. Play after play, the offense seemed to forget he existed. And A.J. Brown is not a man who suffers quietly. Early in the year, he only hit 100 yards twice in his first 7 games. For a receiver of his caliber, that's almost insulting. Then he pulled a hamstring and missed time. When he finally came back, in one game, he caught passes for a grand total of 13 yards. 13. And the frustration that had been simmering all season finally started to boil over. He went on a live stream and let the world know exactly how he felt. He wasn't happy. He didn't hide it. And every time he opened his mouth, or posted something online, it added another crack to a team that was supposed to be built like a fortress. And then came the moment. The one I told you about at the very start. The playoff game. The book. There he was, one of the most dangerous players in the sport, sitting on the bench during the biggest game of the year, reading a self-help book while his teammates fought and bled on the field. The cameras caught it. The internet exploded. It became the image of the entire season. A picture worth 1,000 words, and every one of those words was bad. Because that book on the bench told you everything. It told you a superstar had checked out. It told you a champion locker room had cracks running straight through the middle of it. It told you that something inside this team was broken. And no amount of talent could hide it anymore. And here's the cruel twist. Even with all of that dysfunction, even with a superstar reading books on the sideline, this team was still good enough to make the playoffs. They still won their division for the 3rd straight year. That's how much raw talent was on this roster. They were falling apart at the seams and still winning games. But the playoffs are where the truth comes out. And the truth was ugly. They ran into the San Francisco 49ers. And in the wild card round, at home, in front of their own fans, the Eagles lost. The season was over. The book-reading receiver, the stalled superstar running back, the 23rd ranked passing game, all of it collided in one final, painful night. And just like that, the defending champions were done. Now, if you know anything about the city of Philadelphia, you know how this went over. Philly fans are not gentle. They love their team with everything they have. And when that love gets betrayed, they let you know about it. So when they went looking for someone to blame, they found the offensive coordinator. Kevin Patullo. The man holding the play sheet. The man who took over the best offense in football and watched it crumble. And I mean they really found him. Earlier that season, after an ugly loss to the Chicago Bears, some fans got in their cars, drove to his actual house, and egged it. Threw eggs at the man's home. That's not a rumor. That happened. That's how deep the anger ran. That's how badly this season had gone. A team that started the year as champions ended it with a broken locker room, a home playoff loss, and a coach scrubbing eggs off his front door. So the Eagles did what teams do when everything falls apart. They hit the reset button. Patullo was fired. Gone. And the search began for someone new. Someone to fix the mess. Someone to take all of this incredible talent and make it dangerous again. And this is where our story takes a sharp turn. Because the man they chose, almost nobody saw him coming. Hold that thought for 1 second. Because if you're already hooked on this story, if you're feeling that itch to know how it ends, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps more than you know, and I promise the second half of this story is even crazier than the first. Alright, back to it. So who did the Eagles hire to save their offense? His name is Sean Mannion. And when the news broke, a lot of fans had the exact same reaction. Who? Because Sean Mannion is not a big famous name. He's not a legendary play caller with a shelf full of trophies. In fact, before this job, he had never called plays in an NFL game in his life. Not one. This would be his very first time. And it gets stranger. Because before Sean Mannion was a coach, he was a player. A quarterback. He spent 9 years in the NFL. 9 whole years. And in almost all of those years, he sat on the bench. He was a backup. The guy who holds the clipboard, who runs the scout team, who barely ever sees the field on Sundays. He bounced from team to team, the Rams, the Vikings, the Seahawks. A career spent mostly watching. So how in the world does a career backup quarterback with zero play-calling experience end up in charge of one of the most talented offenses in football? Here's the thing. Sometimes the guys who sit and watch learn more than the guys who play. Because while Mannion was riding the bench, he was standing next to some of the smartest offensive minds in the history of the game. He learned under the coaching tree of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, 2 of the most brilliant offensive coaches alive. He soaked it all in. Every concept, every trick, every way of thinking. Then he became a coach himself, worked his way up with the Green Bay Packers, and helped develop their star quarterback. And people started to notice. This quiet guy who nobody paid attention to? He knew ball. He really knew ball. So the Eagles took a gamble. They looked at this young, unproven, first-time coordinator and they said, "You're our guy. You're the one who's going to fix this." And that decision brings us to the biggest question of this entire story. The question that everything else hangs on. What exactly is this new offense? And why does everyone think it's going to change everything? Let me break it down for you as simply as I possibly can, because this is the heart of it. For years, the Eagles ran their offense a certain way. Their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, would stand a few yards behind the center in what's called the shotgun. He'd catch the ball already deep in the backfield, look downfield, and either run or throw. It's a modern style, and it fit what Hurts was comfortable with. It's what he'd done for most of his career. But Sean Mannion, he does things completely differently. In Mannion's offense, the quarterback stands right up under the center, nose to nose with the big guys up front. This is called being under center. And instead of just standing there and throwing, Hurts is going to turn his back to the defense, fake a handoff to the running back, spin around, and throw. That fake is called play action. It's a trick. You make the defense think you're running the ball, they bite, they crash forward to stop the run, and then boom, you throw it over their heads. And there's more. Mannion loves motion. That means before the ball is even snapped, he'll have receivers running back and forth across the field, shifting around, moving in ways that confuse the defense and force them to show their hand. It's like a magician waving one hand to distract you while the other hand does the trick. And the running game changes too. Instead of just smashing straight ahead, this offense uses something called outside zone, where the whole line moves together, flowing sideways, stretching the defense out, letting the running back find a crease and burst through it. Done right, it's beautiful. It's smooth. It looks like a dance. Put it all together and you get an offense that's built on deception, on timing, on making the defense think one thing while you do another. It attacks the middle of the field. It keeps defenders guessing on every single snap. And when it clicks, it is absolutely lethal. This is the same style of offense that the very best teams in the league have been using to light up scoreboards for years. So on paper, this looks like exactly what the Eagles needed. A fresh, modern, tricky system to unlock all that talent that got stuck in the mud last year. But here's the catch. And it's a big one. Hang on to it, because we're going to come back to it. This new style. It's the complete opposite of what Jalen Hurts has done his whole career. Everything he's comfortable with, everything he's used to. Mannion is asking him to throw it all out and learn a brand new language. And we'll get to whether he can actually do it. But first, we need to talk about the bombshell. The move that shook the entire league. The decision that told everyone this new offense was serious. Because the Eagles didn't just change their coach. They blew up their whole receiving group. And it started with a trade nobody thought they'd actually pull the trigger on. They traded away A.J. Brown. The book-reading superstar. The big physical monster. One of the most talented receivers in the entire NFL. They shipped him off to the New England Patriots. Now, think about how wild this is. Just 2 years earlier, this same man caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl for this team. He was a captain. A leader. One of the faces of the franchise. And now, gone. Traded away. In exchange, the Eagles got a first-round draft pick a couple years down the road, plus a later pick. But make no mistake, this wasn't about the picks. This was about a message. This was the team saying, the era of forcing the ball to one guy is over. We're building something new. Something that doesn't depend on any single superstar. Something where everyone works together. And there's a little detail in this trade that tells you just how smart the Eagles were playing it. They actually waited until a specific date on the calendar to make the deal official. Why? Money. By waiting, they cut the amount of money the trade cost them against their budget in half. $20 million instead of $40 million. They were patient. They were calculated. They knew this was coming for months, and they set it up perfectly, like a chess player thinking 10 moves ahead. So A.J. Brown is gone. That leaves a giant hole. Who's going to catch the ball now? This is where it gets exciting. First, you've got Devonta Smith. Remember him? The smooth, precise receiver who played second fiddle to A.J. Brown all those years. Well, now it's his show. He's the number one. He actually led the whole team in receiving yards last season, even while barely getting the ball thrown his way in a broken offense. He's ready. He's been ready. Now he finally gets his moment in the spotlight. Then the Eagles went shopping. And they brought in a whole new crew of weapons. They used a top pick in the draft. They even traded up to grab him, on a young receiver out of USC named Mekhi Lemon. And this kid is special. The year before, he won the award given to the single best college receiver in the entire country. The best one. Out of everyone. That's the guy they went and got. He's fast, he's smart, and he could be a star in the making. They also traded for a receiver named Dontavian Wicks, and here's the beautiful part. Wicks played under Sean Mannion in Green Bay. He already knows the system. He already speaks the language. So while everyone else is learning, he can hit the ground running and help teach the others. And they added more. A speedy veteran nicknamed Hollywood Brown, a guy who can take the top off a defense and turn a short pass into a long touchdown. Another sharp veteran named Elijah Moore. And a promising young tight end named Eli Stowers to go along with their trusted veteran Dallas Goedert, who quietly led the whole team in touchdown catches last year. So look at what they've done. They took a receiving group that was all about one big star and one guy reading books on the bench, and they turned it into a deep, fast, hungry group of players with something to prove. No egos. No drama. Just a bunch of talented guys who fit together like puzzle pieces. And that's exactly what an offense like Mannion's needs. Not one hero, but a whole team of pieces working in harmony. On paper, it's gorgeous. On paper, it's a dream. New coach, new system, new weapons, all built around timing and teamwork. But football isn't played on paper. It's played on grass, in the cold, under pressure. And all of this beautiful planning comes down to one man. One question. The question I told you we'd come back to. Can Jalen Hurts actually do this? Because here's the truth that a lot of people don't want to say out loud. This whole plan, this entire new offense, it all rests on the shoulders of a quarterback who has spent his career doing the exact opposite of what he's now being asked to do. Let me give you a number that'll blow your mind. Sean Mannion is not just the newest coach Jalen Hurts has had to learn from. Going all the way back to his college days, Hurts has now had 10 different offensive coordinators in 11 years. 10. In 11 years. Just think about what that means. Every single year, almost, a new voice. A new playbook. A new language to learn. A new boss telling him a new way to do everything. Most quarterbacks would crumble under that. Most guys need one system, one coach, years of building to become great. Hurts has had to start over again and again and again. And somehow, he still won a Super Bowl. That tells you how tough he is, how smart he is, how much of a fighter he is. But there's a flip side. And people who watch him closely have pointed it out. Jalen Hurts likes things a certain way. He likes structure. He likes knowing exactly what's coming. He's been described as a guy who prefers a steady, familiar system, one that doesn't change much play to play. He's comfortable in the shotgun. He's comfortable with what he knows. And now here comes Mannion, asking him to do the one thing that might be hardest for him. To let go. To change. To turn his back to the defense on play action, to work all that motion, to learn to throw over the middle in rhythm, to master a whole new way of playing the position at the highest level in the world. That's the drama. That's the tension sitting at the center of this entire season. The greatest strength of this new offense might crash straight into the one thing this quarterback finds hardest. So what does Hurts himself say about all this? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Because instead of complaining, instead of fighting it, he seems to be leaning in. He's talked about wanting to become fluent in the new system, like learning a new language until you can speak it in your sleep. He said that building something new with Mannion actually excites him. And he said something that really stuck with a lot of people. He basically said, everyone gets dealt their own hand of cards in life, and his hand has always been dealing with change, and he's made the most of it. That's not the voice of a guy who's scared. That's the voice of a guy who's been knocked down before and always figured out how to get back up. But wanting to change and actually changing are two very different things. And that's why the next few weeks matter so much. Quick pause here because we're getting to the good part, the part where we look at what's happening right now, today, inside that building. If you're still with me, drop a comment down below and tell me one thing. Do you think this new offense explodes, or do you think it flops? I read every single one, and I want to know where you stand before we get to the finish line. Okay, let's dive back in. So where do things actually stand right now? The team is in training camp. This is where offenses are born. This is where all the planning on the whiteboard finally meets real players on a real field. And the early word coming out of Philadelphia is exactly what you'd expect from a team learning a brand new system. It's messy, but it's promising. There have been stumbles. During the early practices in the spring, you could see the growing pains. New plays getting botched. Timing being off. Receivers and quarterback not quite on the same page yet. That's normal. That's what happens when you tear an offense down to the studs and build it back up from scratch. You don't go from broken to brilliant overnight. But here's the thing that has people buzzing. Hurts, by all accounts, has bought in. He's not fighting the change. He's studying. He's grinding. He's putting in the work to speak this new language. And when a leader like that fully commits, the rest of the team follows. And there's another piece to this that makes the whole thing even more fascinating. Remember, this isn't a team full of rookies. Outside of the receiver group, most of the key players are still here. The offensive line, when healthy, is still one of the best in football. Saquon Barkley is still one of the most dangerous runners on the planet, and an offense built on the run and play action fakes could be exactly what unleashes him again. Imagine Barkley in a system designed to get him into open space, with a quarterback faking handoffs to freeze the defense. That could be terrifying for every team they face. But here's something most people watching won't even think about. Something happening quietly, behind the scenes, that could decide this whole thing. That great offensive line I keep mentioning? It's carrying more than just blocks. One of its leaders, a powerful guard named Landon Dickerson, was so beaten up by the game this past year that he actually started thinking about walking away from football completely. Retiring. The wear and tear on his body had piled up that high. Over the off-season, he traveled to get special injections in his knees and ankles, just hoping to heal enough to keep going. And here's why that matters so much. This new offense, all that outside zone running, all those play-action fakes, asks even more from the big men up front than the old one did. They have to move together, flow together, be perfectly in sync, like five guys sharing one brain. If that line stays healthy and strong, it's the engine that makes everything else go. But if those bodies break down, if the injuries pile up again like they did last year, the whole beautiful machine could grind to a halt. So while everyone's watching the shiny new receivers and the quarterback, keep one eye on those quiet giants up front. Because they might just be the ones who decide whether this offense soars or sinks. So you've got experience, you've got star power, you've got a smart new system, and you've got fresh, hungry weapons. Add it all up and you can see it. You can actually see how this becomes an explosion. You can see a world where, by the middle of the season, this offense clicks into gear, everyone starts speaking the same language, and suddenly the Eagles look like the scariest team in football all over again. The talent is there. The plan is there. The pieces fit. And you knew there was a but coming. There's a real chance this doesn't work. And we have to be honest about that too. Because there are landmines all over this field. What if Hurts can't get comfortable in a system that fights against his instincts? What if losing a talent like A.J. Brown leaves a hole that all those new receivers can't quite fill? What if the offensive line, which battled injuries last year, gets banged up again and the whole thing falls apart up front? What if a first-time play caller, in his very first year holding that sheet, makes the kind of rookie mistakes that cost you games in the fourth quarter? Any one of those things could turn this dream into a nightmare. And the pressure is enormous. Because it's not just the players on the line here. It's the coach too. The head coach, Nick Sirianni, has won a huge percentage of his games. He's a Super Bowl winner. But in this league, what you did last year doesn't buy you much. And there are already whispers. If this offense sputters again, if the team stumbles, some fans will be calling for him to be gone. The heat is on. The seats are hot. This isn't a season where they can afford to slowly figure things out. They need it to work. And they need it to work soon. Now, there is one thing quietly working in their favor through all of this. One safety net. Because while the offense figures itself out, the Eagles still have a defense that can flat out wreck games. Up front, they've got two young mountains of men, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, who can crush a pocket and blow up a running play almost by themselves. Behind them, a group of young, hungry cover guys who can lock receivers down and take the ball away. And here's why that matters. A great defense buys an offense time. It means you don't have to score 40 points to win a football game. It means that even on the days the new offense sputters and stalls, this team can still win ugly, win close, win with pure grit. And every one of those ugly wins gives Hurts and Mannion something precious, breathing room. Time to grow. Time to let the new system click without the whole season falling apart around them. That's the cushion. That might just be the thing that keeps this entire experiment alive long enough to actually bloom. So think about the two roads in front of this team. Down one road, everything clicks. Hurts becomes fluent in the new language. Barkley explodes back into a monster. Devonta Smith becomes a full-blown star. The young rookie becomes a weapon. The offense that was 23rd in the league rockets back up toward the top, and the Eagles become the team nobody wants to see in January. The gamble pays off. The reset works. The champions rise again. Down the other road, the pieces never quite fit. The learning curve is too steep. The change is too much. The offense sputters and stalls just like it did last year. The frustration comes back. The pressure boils over. And a team that had everything watches its window slam shut, with a coach possibly losing his job on the way out. Two roads. Same team. And nobody, not the experts, not the fans, not even the players, knows for sure which one they're walking down. That's what makes this so incredible to watch. That's what makes this the most fascinating team in football heading into this season. Now let's bring it all the way back to where we started. To that image. The superstar on the bench, reading a book while his team fought and lost. That was rock bottom. That was the symbol of a champion that had lost its way. A team that had everything, and somehow let it slip through their fingers. And what the Eagles are doing right now is trying to erase that image forever. They fired the coach whose house got egged. They traded away the superstar who checked out. They brought in a quiet, unproven genius with a brand new plan. They rebuilt their weapons from the ground up. And they're asking a Super Bowl MVP to become a student all over again, to learn a new language, to change in the ways that are hardest for him to change. It's a massive bet. Maybe the biggest bet in the whole league this year. And the beautiful, terrifying thing about it is this: it's either going to look like the smartest thing any team has ever done, or it's going to look like they took a championship roster and broke it for no reason. There's no in-between. There's no safe middle ground. This team is either about to explode or implode. And we're all about to find out which. So here's what I want you to do. When this season kicks off, watch the Eagles closely. Watch how Hurts moves under center. Watch for those play-action fakes, that motion before the snap, that new rhythm. Watch to see if Saquon Barkley starts ripping off those long runs again. Watch Devonta Smith step into the spotlight. Because if it starts to click, if you see those pieces snap into place, you'll be watching the birth of something dangerous. And you'll remember this exact moment, when the whole league was asking the same question we've been asking this whole time. Are the Philadelphia Eagles ready to explode? I've got my answer. Now I want yours. Drop it in the comments right now. Explode or implode. Tell me what you really think, and tell me why. And if you made it this far, if you love breaking down the stories behind a game like this, then you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications, because the moment this season starts and we get real answers, you're going to want to be right here when we break down every twist, every turn, and every explosion. Because one way or another, this story is far from over. In fact, it's just getting started. And trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next.